Guys, I'm really, really glad to be back to our podcast, Healthcare Uncut, Unfiltered. I've been busy going down the mountain on skis. I know you, Alex, spent some time up in the mountains.
Separate mountains, but
yep, separate mountains. Tell us a little bit about your ski trip.
Oh, we had a blast. This was a boys' trip, so I have a longtime friend that lives in Breckenridge, Colorado, and his brother and myself, and he do a trip once a year where we crash his house and probably really annoy his wife, but we skied for 4 days, 3 days at Breckenridge, 1 day at Keystone, and this is my trip to ski all the backcountry and do harder stuff. So because the family trips are more kind of slow paced and low key, but it was fun. We had a good time. Wore ourselves out. My legs are sore.
Did you have a good ski season this year? I know you go a bunch.
Well,
you'd live there, I think. If
this is the first year, this is the longest I've ever gone without skiing. Like usually, I've done a couple trips by now, but nothing worked out this year until this trip, and then we're going to turn around and go back with the whole family for spring break here in a week or so.
Good for you.
So it'll be a little shorter season than I'm used to, but that's okay.
We took Sam and Sheridan and Tabby to Angel Fire, and it's kind of our annual trip. It's our fourth time to go. The kids go to ski school, and Tabby and I go enjoy a little bit of skiing by ourselves, and then we have the second day where it's everybody racing everybody, and how many runs can we get in, and they've got a bunny slope at Angel Fire. It's called Dreamcatcher, and if I don't ski that slope ever again, I'll be the happiest human alive. I skied it with Sheridan this year. I skied it 15 times. Oh, my God. It was absolutely crazy, but it was pretty cool. We had a good time. I'm glad to be back. Brandon, you've been doing anything exciting at all since we've last collaborated on the podcast?
So much fun. Absolutely. I haven't got to do – I need to go skiing. I don't typically ski. I'm a tall guy. Sure. If you're listening to this and you've never seen me, I'm 6'5" or so. And there's just things you don't do when you're tall. You know,
I don't know.
I'm telling you, I've tried to ski, I've tried to snowboard. Even in the water skiing, no one can really get me up. It's like, it's not for me. So I would like to try to enjoy it sometime. I haven't been in a very long time because I had such a bad time, like you're saying. If you never skied, maybe it's the environment too. Maybe it's the wrong place. So could be me.
Who knows?
Well, guys, it's
take you snowmobiling.
Yeah, absolutely. Snowmobiling's legit. We've done that. It's a lot of fun. The only thing about snowmobiling that I didn't like is we were with a guide. I'd like to get out on a snowmobile.
They rarely let you go.
Yeah.
I went.
Like
once,
you got to buy the snowmobile.
I went once in New Mexico. I think it was Red River, and we went up to this kind of mountaintop lake, and this was in Crested Butte, and they let us go on the lake. Like you have 30 minutes to just ride around in circles and find whatever you want, and then came back and guided back down. But that's the only time they've let you loose. But
yeah,
it's fun though.
Snowmobiles are fun. So guys, let's dive into a little bit. There was one kind of question that we had, and I think it was our second or third episode, and it's kind of been on my mind. And I thought we would kind of see if we could unpack some of it a little bit, and I think that's kind of how this podcast can unfold a lot, is that there's so many nuances and ways in this system of healthcare to create money, to create revenue and all that. And I guess our spirit for this podcast is for employers out there to know that there's a different way. And Brandon asked last time, how do you put this in place? How do you employ some of the solutions and things that we've been talking about? What do we do? And we talked a little bit about how to get that in, talk to the broker first. But the one thing that stopped me, over the last, week and a half since we haven't been together was the question kind of, there's a deeper side of that broker piece. And it's, if you really want to dive into a health plan that's going to be, effective, cost saving, and better for your employees, you got to follow the money. And what I mean by follow the money is if you want to really impact your employer health plan, you've got to be involved with vendor selection. And the reason I say to be involved with vendor selection, your PBM, your TPA, your wellness group, anybody that comes and adds value to an employee benefit plan, if you're not involved in that and your broker is putting this together for you, there's a really solid chance that broker is getting paid by one of those guys, one of those organizations. And the key to this for me, and there's a lot to talk about as it relates to how this works, but the key to it for me is I only want to work for my client. I only want to be paid by my client. And there's a big reason why a lot of brokers out there pick a PBM or they pick a TPA. There's something in it for them with that PBM or that TPA. And if you're an employer and you really, really want to see to it that the plan is functioning to your best interests, you got to know what all arrangements are being made in back rooms. And I'm just saying step up and be heavily involved in vendor selection. That to me is a key component to putting a plan like this in place, Brandon, like you had talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I take it for granted because when I first even learned about free market medicine and direct healthcare, those questions sort of fell on my lap to ask as opposed to me ever thinking about it on my own. I mean, I wasn't necessarily in charge of choosing a plan for the employer I work for, but I got involved with it as time went on, and those questions come up because you start asking, who's getting paid if I choose this PBM over the other, and how does that impact my bottom line? And then who's getting paid if I choose, this network? If I rent this network, what does it cost? Does somebody else get paid? When I pay that payment to rent that network, does someone else get a cut of that? On down the line, et cetera, through all of it. So it kind of felt natural because we were already in that process of choosing. But the funny thing to me is I'm sitting here thinking and sitting across from my broker is that I've never asked you how you get paid, Mark.
Is that a formal question? Are you saying, hey, are you willing to divulge how your income rolls in?
No, I'm demanding that you tell me right now how you pay.
Isn't...
Well, in fact, honestly, we should probably back up because I think Mark's in a bit of a transition, and I think
Absolutely.
You may want to tell everyone what's happening with you. That still doesn't change the fact that you're my broker, and I'm going to ask you how you get paid.
Right.
Maybe compare before and then how you want to do things going forward.
Sure. And listen, you're not our only client. You're not my only client, and I get paid differently by some clients than I do by you. The transition that Alex is talking about is I actually sent in a resignation letter to the company I'm working for. I've been working for the last 3 years. It's called Relation Insurance. Great company. Learned a lot with that organization. Made some great relationships. Did well with them and had a lot of success, I would say. But at the end of the day, I just kind of feel led to kind of bet on myself to get out there and do my own deal. And part of me being led to do that has to do with how I get paid. And so Relation, when I started with them, was a small, they're about a $7, $8, $9 million insurance firm. They did property and casualty. They did employee health care and a lot of different facets of insurance. But I came on as an employee benefits specialist, and they were in the middle of a private equity merger. And when private equity gets involved in some of these organizations, they get large checkbooks that are required to be used to create some merger and acquisition growth. And so their desire was to get bigger. And they did get bigger, and with size comes corporation type rules. And some of those things were not what I kind of signed on to work for. And at the end of the day, it revolved a lot around income and the way one human being in the organization imparted upon me a change in my income. Well, that being said, I'm going to go out on my own, and I'm going to be a broker that is that stands for working for your client only. And here's what I mean by that. The way I get comped at Relation is if I bring in 100% of everything that's in this cup, and that's one deal, that's one company, and all the revenue that company makes from an insurance standpoint is in this cup. Relation immediately pours out 60% for them, and they take 60% of that. So if it's 100 people and there's 500 employees, I'm sorry, they all pay $500 a month. And this will be a real simple math. They vary. It fluctuates, and 500 is an easy number. So 100 people times 500 a month is 30%, is 300. Is that 300 or 3,000? Yeah. Times 12. Annualize it. It's $3,600. That's how much premium that we have. If that's a Blue Cross and Blue Shield plan, we get 5% of that. Relation gets 5% of that. And so if you divide it by 10 times 2, that's 5%, right? $720 goes to Relation. I get 40% of that. That's my take on a 100 life case. If it's $500 a month, everybody's paying $500 a month premium. The second year after that, Relation moves my cut from 40% to 25%. And so I get less.
Is that just an incentive up front for you to
grow new business?
Hit the streets and okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They want organic growth.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they de-incentivize me to keep my relationship with the groups that I bring in. And you know me well enough to know that I'm a relationship guy, and that's not going to happen. So part of my reason to make a transition had to do with income. The other part of it had to do with the fact that I want to be a relationship builder. And rather than make 25% of 100% of what I bring in, I want to make more. And so I'm going to go stand on my own 2 feet, and I'm going to see if I can't create some relationships with people and bring more business in. But that's kind of a industry standard on how a comp model works. Some companies do it differently. I think Gallagher does a different comp model. But at the end of the day, if you're not working and getting paid solely by your client, you're serving more than one master. Your client is your master. That's who's paying you. You should work exclusively for them. And the example I'll give you, and there'll be questions, I know, but the example I'll give you is I met with a guy not long ago that has a wellness company. And I may have mentioned this in the podcast in the past, so I apologize for any redundancy, but it's pretty relevant. We were sitting at Hamilton having a beverage and talking about his wellness program and how it dovetails really well into self-funded plans, but he can't for the life of him figure out why a broker won't put this wellness plan in place because he's offering to pay the broker. And he asked me what I do, how I work, and I told him, and he goes, Mark, I'll pay you X to put my wellness plan in there. And I said, I know it would work. I said, but my question to you is this: can you write that check to my client? He goes, what do you mean? I go, I only receive payment from my clients because if I do receive a payment from someone else, I'm not working for just them. I start working for you now. And he couldn't believe it. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. But the vast majority of the brokers I talk to, there's rare occasions when I talk to a broker that's not looking for a comp from some area of the vendors, providers that they put in place for an employee benefit plan. If the TPA says, we'll give you 5% of the stop loss, they're going to place that TPA with everybody. If the PBM says, we'll give you $1 a script, $1 a prescription, you put our PBM in place. These guys are cashing big checks. They cash big checks. PBMs, ESI, they, from what I understand in the past, have had an amazing relationship with the big house here, and they were giving back $5 per prescription to a large house like Relation. And it was a huge arrangement. I mean, it's absolutely a huge check. One thing that I did not long ago when I was in the PBM space was I looked at a Gallagher SEC filing. And it'll tell you to follow the money. And you'll have questions about this, and we'll visit here in a second. But in the Gallagher SEC filing, this was back in 2018, 2019, when the free market movement was really kicking up. And I had somebody from Gallagher call me and really roast me over posting this SEC filing on LinkedIn. I put a 145-page SEC filing on LinkedIn with highlights on the page and told everybody where the page was. And I told them straight up, if you think this organization's out for your bottom line, you're wrong. Read this page and the highlighted words that I showed you. In their SEC filing, Gallagher put in there some language, and I'm not quoting it right now, and I can get it, but I'm not quoting it, but I'm paraphrasing, and I'm saying the language was, in effect, we realize that a lot of companies are moving to a fee-only scenario with their brokers. We are putting measures in place to make sure that our shareholders do not suffer from this type of an arrangement, as it's not going to bring in the same amount of money as a percentage of premium will. If they have a percentage of premium and your premiums go up every year, what happens with the broker? Mm-hmm. They get a raise every year. And so Gallagher had to explain to their shareholders that employers are getting wise. They're getting wise, and they're going on a fee-only basis, which means if they get a raise, they got to ask for it. It's not built in. So my point in the how I get paid by you guys, I have a set PEPM from your organization that goes into the third-party administrator, the TPA, and they cut us a broker fee from that. And it's set. That doesn't go up. The way I get my raise is not based off of an increase or decrease in your premiums. The way I get my raise with you guys is I go to the boss man and I say, hey, look, we're only charging you guys $16 PEPM. We feel like we've saved you X amount of dollars. We've employed these strategies. We've moved you into this direction. I'd sure like to move that up to $18. And that's how a raise should be acquired in this marketplace. But the whole thing to me revolves around how important is it for the employer to be involved with the benefit plan. Some of them don't want to deal with it. Some of them just... Well,
I agree with that. And I'm involved in it, but to say that I understand how to choose a PBM or a network or a whatever piece of the plan we're picking, that would be a lie. Like I don't understand PBMs.
Right.
So there is a level of trust in the relationship, but if the relationship starts with, I'm going to be transparent about how I'm paid, and then when I bring, like when you've brought us PBMs, I'm going to be transparent about and make them be transparent about the rebate checks, about, I don't know, PBMs are insanely complicated. I remember, my mind's drawing a blank, Chad
Schmidt
spoke at the FMMA conference, and it was something like he showed like the 18 different ways or 15 different ways that PBMs get paid by the pharmacy, or by the big pharma, by the drug companies. It's hidden in every little pocket and place you could imagine, and it literally is like 15 different ways a single PBM can be paid by a single drug manufacturer. If that doesn't smell of, the lack of transparency, I don't know what is. And that was kind of his point when he was speaking. So while I don't understand the PBM world, what I hope to understand is who my broker is. Are they transparent? And do I trust them enough to show me the options and say, like, I'm okay with you saying, this PBM offered me X, this PBM offered me Y, and this one offered me Z, and I'm going to show you all that. And instead of saying no to them, let's let them pay, but I'm going to have them pay you, And then, yes, next year when you come to me and you're like, hey, this is what I brought you. This is what you got paid by the PBM that I didn't take. Can I have some of that back? The answer is going to be yes. I mean, the transparency piece is the big deal to me.
Sure. Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what matters. But I'm going to add a little layer to that. As important as transparency is, our incentives have to be aligned. And that's a struggle for me in this marketplace, is to see brokers out there or consultants or whatever out there with the horribly misaligned incentives. And by an aligned incentive, what I mean is that If I get up and I go to work and I'm driven by the money that I make, and the money is only coming from my client, then I'm working my tail off. I'm incentivized to do the best I can for my client. But if I get up of a morning and I know I got money coming from you, I know I got money coming from PBM, I know there's a paycheck probably coming from TPA, and I know, and that's the kind of scenario. Which paycheck's bigger, and who am I going to work harder for? So it may be harder for you to get me on the phone if you're not paying me more than the PBM, because I'm not selling that PBM to everybody I can talk to. But at the end of the day, you hired me to work for you. And so that to me is what I think is so valuable in this space, is to know your broker's incentivization. Know if it's aligned with what you are trying to accomplish from a health benefit plan. But the key to that is you got to take an active role as an employer. If you don't take an active role in that plan and just say, hey, here, broker, I trust you. You coach my daughter in basketball. If you don't take that active role in this space, there's going to be money changing hands. There are going to be backroom deals that occur, and incentives can become very, very, very misaligned. The last piece of it is this. You're good at this. Having worked with you, I know how you do this, but you have to learn to read contract language. If you don't understand contract language, you're going to get money. That's where PBMs win. And the number wasn't 17 or 18, it's 32.
Oh, okay.
There are 32 different spots in a PBM where they can take money from you. They have a MAC list, which is called the maximum allowable cost. And they've got AWP, which is actual wholesale price. If you're controlling both of these, what are you controlling? You're controlling your margin. PBMs can adjust a MAC list by a half a cent and make $1 million. I've seen them show me the ways that works. But at the end of the day, if you know what MAC list they're using, because they can have more than one MAC list that allows them to make money. I mean, they're not housing just one proprietary MAC list. They've got multiple, but they can switch you from MAC list to MAC list if they realize that your utilization in a certain area, in the insulin world or in the generic world or in the preferred brand or non-preferred brand world, if they see utilization off of that and it's costing them, they flip you to another MAC list, and all of a sudden it becomes more profitable. So if you understand contract language, you can point those things, you can see those things out. And quite frankly, 3 years in the PBM world, I still don't understand them. I've got a buddy that really, really, really does. And so whenever I'm looking at a contract for my clients, for you guys, I have her take a peek at it. I have her always redline it for me. And if I miss a spot, she obviously always will pick it out. And the other thing I will say too, Alex, is I'm a big believer in if you trust your broker, man, I don't know how to say this the right way, but if your broker always stands in between you and the people that are providing you the service, he's hiding something from you. My belief in that world is I want my people who run my PBM to meet my client. I want them to know each other, because true collaboration begins there. If the broker doesn't want you to talk to each other, he's hiding something from you. There's a chance that he's hiding something from you, or they are hiding something from you. So those are some of the ways that you guys can kind of digest a little bit to see how we get paid. I don't take another penny from anybody other than the PEPM that is established ahead of time, that the TPA collects, and they write a check to me on your case.
Right.
So if there's, and it can change based on if a company grows. If a company grows, my income grows because I'm probably doing some more work. But that's kind of the answer to your question is I make a set fee based off of each employee, and I don't take another penny from anybody else.
Well, my takeaway here too is, when I told on myself and said I've never even asked that question, but that's the point, is asking questions. Mm-hmm. I kind of knew already because I get to see all the contracts and all the PEPM prices and, the stop loss quotes and the, everything, TPA. But, asking questions is something I think, for the listener, just get in the habit of doing that. So, for example, I think it was a couple years ago on the PBM, we get the quote, and it's not like the usually if you're renewing a health plan, they're going to say, here's your three options. And it sometimes has to do with how much of the risk are you willing to take, how much a deductible per employee, whatever it might be, or what's the cost, what's the premium price or whatever it be. So you've got 3 or 4 options to choose from, and it might be different carriers, it might be, and you choose one. But no one's ever asking questions within those quotes on each line. So for example, we got a PBM quote, and we kind of said, well, what does that include? And they're like, well, it's just, your basic pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, local. And we're like, well, what if we cut out CVS and Walgreens or anyone? Is there any plan that would, if we cut out certain, pharmacies, would it save us money if we said, hey, employees, you need to go here to get your meds from now on? And they were like, well, yeah, we can cut out CVS and Walgreens, and we need probably one big box carrier. We'll leave Walmart in, and then local. We're like, do it. We did it. Now, was there some grumbling? And a little bit, but honestly not much.
Some reverb, yeah.
There's a Walmart almost on every corner.
And they're open 24/7.
Right. And so we kind of explained that, but it saved us a significant amount of money. Then we came in with another, PBM the next year that added back in Walgreens.
Because they had a contract with them.
Right. And it worked out okay. But who would have ever thought to, and I don't remember who came up with that question. It might have even been you, Mark, but because you talked to the PBM about it. Mm-hmm. But I would have never thought to ask, well, that's the quote. I guess that's what the pharmacy plan costs. That's fine. Oh, yeah, you're just used to going where you go, and it's okay. But asking questions within that, or even within the TPA world, we've changed TPAs 3 times now. And honestly, both the major, shift for us was that they were bought, like you were talking about earlier.
Acquisition.
Your current or former employer now, these big houses come in, they buy up, and most of the TPAs are being bought by the BUCAs. So one of the big insurance carriers, they all have their own TPAs, mm-hmm. and they're all going around the country and buying up all the local, if you want to call them mom and pop, they're not all tiny, but they're independently owned TPAs, and they're buying them up. So we were at a TPA that was independent. They got bought by United. I don't like that. They said they'd keep everything the same, but writing's on the wall. So we moved to a local TPA out of Tulsa. Year later, they get bought up. And so we moved again. So it's almost, which is another good mentality for everyone to get into, at least in on a high level, is think about shopping local. Whether that's retail, we think of Walmart as the big blue monster. At least I do. I mm-hmm. still shop there on occasion, so I'm not saying it's not convenient and doesn't, isn't good for people. But there's a push in this country to buy local, shop local, help, the small business succeed. I think there's a reason for that, especially in healthcare. When you deal with a smaller TPA, a smaller network, a smaller brokerage, they're not beholden to whatever that big corporate conglomerate is above their head saying, no, we only sell Blue Cross products. No, we only, have this. This is our price no matter what for our TPA services. And you have to include all, everything with it, not mm-hmm. just claim management, but 401k and blah, 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 Cobra on down the line. And that probably, when a broker goes and sells that, it probably gives them a better paycheck. Mm-hmm. But when the broker gets to a company that somebody asks the question and says, well, could I move to someone else that does this, this, and this? They should say yes, but that's going to be difficult, and be honest about it, and say, I'm going to get paid less, or that's not, my brokerage firm won't allow me to do that, or whatever the answer is. But that's not usually the answer. The answer is, well, no, this is the best place for you. They really have done a great job. Let me show you how much they've done for you. And they move on, and you say, okay, and that's fine. And you sign on the line and you pay your 15% increase.
Exactly.
Because, and again, telling you to ask questions is a good thing, but pushing those questions is a better thing, because mm-hmm. I think some people probably are asking questions now, even if it's as simple as, how do I stop this bleeding? How do I stop paying a 15% increase? And I'll even put my be nice to brokers hat on for a minute and say, it's not always their fault either. They may not know what questions to ask. They've been doing what they're doing for a long time. All they know is to go get the quotes from 3 carriers, and they've never even written a self-insured plan. They don't know about level funded plans. They don't know about direct primary care. They don't know, it's not them being nefarious necessarily. It might be lazy. It might be head in the sand.
Incompetent.
That kind of thing. But incompetent could be the reason.
But is it a lack of ingenuity? Is it a lack of being able to, like most things, most jobs, it requires it requires effort. It requires not only caring about what you're serving, but also the people you're serving. And I don't know enough about it yet. We're still learning. But if you were to pick a good broker, if you were to tell somebody who's looking for a broker to work with, what qualities are you telling them to look for? Or even maybe it's even easier to answer it. What qualities are you telling them to not settle down with when it comes to a broker?
The simplest one to me is if the broker has no other option except to lay you a quote that they got from somebody else on the table, and it's the same as last year and the year before and the year before. And
how often does that happen? Is that rampant?
It's the majority of the time, right, Mark? It's not like we are in the middle of the revolution of that. That's what this podcast is about.
Right.
There are people out there doing it differently, but think about, Brandon, if whatever job you have, and somebody's telling you, hey, there's a different way to do this, it's probably going to be a little more work for you, and you might not make as much money. Go find out about it.
Yeah.
You'd be like, no, why would I do that?
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. They're making a good living. They love the relationship they have with the carriers. They pay them well. Up until, a few years ago, it's just what everybody did. There wasn't really an alternative to save money. It was just, this is the increase. I'm just a broker. I can't control that quote. It's based on your population, your census, the number of claims you had the previous year. And if you ask, well, how is that done? They're gonna be like, I don't know. We send it to them, and it's
called underwriting. And nobody understands underwriting.
The actuary wizards behind the curtain do it, and they're super smart people, and they're not going to lose money, But I gotta believe there's a little bit of, we're just going to tack on a little bit anyway. It's not all based on science. It's based on what is the public accepted at this point. And they've done a great job to get every employer to just accept a double-digit increase in premiums year over year over year. And I don't think it was that way 20 years ago. And and there's reasons for that I'm not aware of, but I guarantee you there's a intentional push to train brokers and employers this is how it is. That's what you always heard. This is nothing I can do. It's
monopoly.
Just, I just wrote another customer that had a 22% increase. You're getting a 12. Like, be thankful. You're like, oh man, that's awesome. You're so great. And again, it might not be the broker's fault. I'm not
right
putting that on them 100% because they are dealing with an industry that they deal with. And that industry is a money-making machine, and they're good at it. And they just have to peddle the products.
Well, and they're feeding their family. Really, at the end of the day, they want to feed their family.
But we're here to say to all the brokers, to the employers, to the employees, to the TPAs, to the carriers, to everyone, there's a different way to do it, and it's not just coming, it's here. And so you can get on board, and as a broker, you could really do well for yourself because you could start shifting all of your clients to this model, because eventually everyone's going to switch to this model.
Absolutely.
And if you're at the forefront of that and you're the trusted guy and they start telling their friends over and over, it's an advantage. It's a competitive advantage at this point, and it works. And so I think we're almost to the, getting close to a tipping point of get on board or get left behind.
I'm pretty far away from the situation, and I get to learn every week, watching and listening and interacting. And you said if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think I can imagine that people operate in that mentality. But we just heard the story about how you're stepping away from where you are, and we've just been so blessed to know great brokers, great people who really care about people. I mean, when I've had multiple instances where Mark has called me and has offered just solution upon solution. It's never just one thing. So if I'm ever in the situation where I'm looking for a broker, I'm absolutely looking for somebody that allows me to help come up with a solution. But the other thing is like, I like that you're starting your own thing. That's impressive to me as just a normal dude who doesn't know anything about it, because I think it's different and it shows that you care about people. And that's what we're all trying to get back to. And I think you're right. We are at this apex of kind of coming right to where we think we're about to be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think it comes on the backs of people like you who are pushing everything in, saying, I believe in what I can do for the people I love, and that's what's going to happen. So,
well, Brandon, I want to answer your question a little bit and how you find that broker. How do you know? How do you select? What are you looking for in that broker? And to me, Alex hit something really, really pivotal in that process, and it is the increase. It's how does your broker historically handle the increase of your health care for your employees year over year? Is he playing that game? Is he saying, golly, I had 5 groups that were 20 and 22%, increase. Well, you were at 12. You're in great shape. Or is he as outraged about it as you are and embarrassed to bring you a 20%, 22% increase?
Has that happened in your relationship?
Yes. I've had groups where they've had a huge increase, and I knew going in that explanation about increase was going to hurt. It was going to hurt to the point that I'm at risk as a partner for them. And so what a good broker will do is come in and say, well, the carrier here that we've been with thinks that we need to charge you 22% more. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we can't get them down. There's a possibility we get this down to 17%. But at the end of the day, here's all of our options on the table. Here's what a self-funded plan looks like. And the questions start, well, what about, isn't that risky? Well, yeah, there's risk involved, but anything really in life worth doing is going to require a little bit of risk. But the risk has all been mitigated by stop loss and the things that ERISA, and we'll break down ERISA one day. That's another podcast in itself.
You can.
Yeah, it's the Employee Retirement Income Securities Act. It was in 1972, and this is why people haven't been doing it very long. It was built in 1972, and that's whenever people started realizing that they could take back control of their employee health plan, and self-funding plans were born from that. Another story, another time. Your broker, if he's not bringing you alternative solutions, the solution right now in the healthcare world is your costs are up. What are we going to do? The premiums are going to be higher. Pass it on to the employees. Let's raise deductibles. Let's do this. Let's premium increase. We're going to do less of an employer contribution. We're going to do these things, and we're going to pass the cost on to the employees. If those are the suggestions that your broker is bringing you, he's not a friendly, I call him friendly broker. He's not a friendly broker. He's lazy or incompetent or doesn't want to have his income impacted. And I don't fault anybody for that. We all want to make money.
You know what I think's odd? And I've never asked, but we at a renewal, you get this piece of paper that has multiple options of plans that your broker's company has put together. Why don't we ever get the email straight from the carrier of what the quote is? We get a spreadsheet of what was put in as the quote, but is that always the actual quote, or is that marked up?
I've seen
Are you allowed to answer this?
I can't answer.
Oh my goodness. This seems okay. All right.
No, there are there's not a ton of regulation on that. I mean, if you're dealing with ERISA, you're not governed by the local insurance commission. You're governed federally. And so if you're dealing with a self-funded plan, you could come in with an increase. A stop-loss carrier could call me and say, we need to increase these guys 7%. And I'd say, go ahead and increase them 10 and give me the 3. That kind of stuff occurs all the time. And on the fully insured world, I've seen 2 and 3% renewals get knocked up to 5% to make an extra coin. It
makes sense.
It's a great question.
If that was legal or if that happened. Or...
Yeah. I mean, I don't. That's a great question. We need a insurance lawyer to tell us a little bit more about it. I've seen it happen, and nobody's gotten in trouble that I'm aware of for it. I don't think
they might now.
Yeah. Because we got so many listeners on our podcast that are just going to go blow the whistle on this deal for sure. But no, at the end of the day, you want to be able to identify your broker. You want to know the right questions they ask. You want to know the key to it, to me, truthfully, guys, is learn to read contract language. Take an active role. If you don't take an active role, you open yourself. Do you take an active role in your retirement? You take an active role in your actual checking account? You take an active role in a car purchase? In an automobile purchase? It's a very active role. I don't understand why some employers out there trust their brother-in-law so much to keep them in this renewal increase cycle and don't ask questions and don't take an active role and say, hey, brother-in-law, why aren't we shopping this in other areas?
If nothing else, tell them your pain. I mean, the system's kind of built that way, though. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go buy office supplies, you can just call a Staples rep or Office Depot or whatever.
Amazon.
You can find a place and compare pricing yourself. But but when it comes to insurance products, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're a layman. You're a peon.
Your broker wants you to
have
believe
to
that.
hire somebody with. Well, I can't go purchase a Blue Cross plan on my own, can I?
Sure.
You can?
Yeah, it's
what
insurance.
Are brokers
insurance
for anyway?
guy.
We don't need them at all.
Well, you can't buy a group health plan on your own.
Right. So it's built sort of that, well, we have to be the experts. We have to have licenses. We have to have all this stuff, which is true, and it is complicated, and I'm all for it. However, at least we'll keep using the brother-in-law broker. Go to your brother-in-law and be like, hey, like, this is painful. Like, I'm not going to be able to sustain my company much longer if I keep getting these increases that are above inflation, above cost of living, above doesn't make sense. If
they're outpacing gross domestic product.
Any other product any other expense in my company was increasing this fast, I would be all over it, demanding answers as to why am I paying 18% more for paper every single year, every time. But we don't do that because it doesn't make sense. I don't know. It's just what everybody does.
It's confusing.
And then you talk to your buddies that own business. They're like, well, same for me.
But they won't do anything because they've got to divorce somebody.
Imagine asking your brother-in-law and saying, this is painful. Is there anything we can do? Like, I don't want to take money out of your pocket. So you tell me what you get paid. I'm going to pay you that exact amount if you can decrease the other parts. Let's start there. I'm not going to take money from you. You make X off me, I'm going to write you a check right now. But the rest, we got to get down 10% or whatever that number is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here is to find a broker or make your broker work that way. So they know you're not trying to screw them. They know you just want them to work for you.
Absolutely. Misaligned incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing to me is so many organizations out there know a guy or I got a guy, or when you've got somebody as close to you as, your family member, telling them you want to get this down and them realizing it's going to affect their income, it can get messy and it can get ugly and it can screw up Thanksgiving dinner, and it can mess with a lot of things, and it's disruptive in your life space. So you live with this 12, 15, 20% increase past the cost onto the employees and keep the great relationship with your brother-in-law or your golf buddy or your pastor at church or whoever it is. But at the end of the day, it's taking that active role, be involved with vendor selection. And when you're involved with vendor selection, contracts are involved. Learn to read contracts. And if your broker isn't trying to put these things in front of you and share with you, not highlighting the areas where money is exchanged in a contract, your broker's not doing anything for you. He's going and buying something for you and saying, here, you got this, good luck. I'll see you at renewal next year. And that's kind of what's happening. And if you've got a close proximity relationship to them, I don't care if it's like we've gone over several different ways. If you've got a close proximity relationship with them, it's really difficult to ask tough questions like what you just talked about, Alex. If you can't ask those tough questions, you're handcuffed. You're handcuffed. End of story. You can't do what you need to do with your plan. But you're spot on. If their fleet insurance for their HVAC trucks goes up $3,000 or $4,000, you guarantee they're calling their PNC guy, and they don't care who he is. But with healthcare, it's so convoluted, so messy, so unregulated in some areas that you just don't want to fight the battle because you don't want to piss off the guy that is doing it for you. You think he's working really hard. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to unpack, and we could talk about it for a considerable amount of time more. But I just really, it really kind of weighed on me a little bit, Brandon, when you asked, how do I use this? How do we use it is one thing. How do we use it effectively is another. And Alex, you guys are a model of how to use it effectively. You and Steve have asked the right questions,
and it's worked.
Yeah,
I mean, and if anybody wants to do anything, like actually do anything, like we do have a website, we have a contact form,
social media.
Get a hold of me. I can point you in the right direction. Spend, I don't know what it costs every year, but $350 or so. Go to the Free Market Medical Association conference. You'll meet physicians and TPAs and PBMs and other brokers,
absolutely,
and primary care docs, and
we'll be there doing our podcast.
Great speakers, yeah, we'll hopefully be there doing our podcast this year.
Yep.
But speakers like Rand Paul, and I mean, it will open your eyes to the world that has been hidden from you.
Yeah, FMMA.org. Does that sound right?
I believe so.
I think it's FMMA.org. Go check out FMMA. There's great reading to do on FMMA.org.
They have a shop health tab. You can literally go on and put in a procedure name, a CPT code.
Yeah.
You'll get a price all over the country.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's easy.
Our website is www.healthcareuncutunfiltered.com.
No.
Did I say it wrong?
Why don't you learn it? Healthcare
It's new. Alex, give me a break.
It'll be I assume it'll be linked under the actual podcast, but it's healthcareucuf.com.
Yeah, the more you learn about all this, the less you feel like you need to take a drink after a conversation about it, which is something that I wanted to show off. Was we got these nice cups, man.
These are
thanks, Mark.
These are whiskey glasses. These are actually what's called an old fashioned, and I thought we needed to. If we're gonna do this podcast thing, we're gonna do it right.
We are.
If we're gonna toast a little bit of spirit after every round of conversation, well, we want to do it where it looks right.
And this week we've got Weller Antique 107, or what is it? OWA.
OWA
on the acronym market. Pass that over. So you'll find out with many bourbons and whiskeys, they're kind of all tied together. So Weller, was it E.H. Weller?
It's W.L. Weller.
W.L. I wrote it down, actually. William LaRue. So some credit him to be the first one to trade out wheat for rye in bourbons, which is kind of a big deal if he did actually do that. He also hired a gentleman by the name of Julian Van Winkle.
Yep.
If anybody's ever heard of Pappy Van Winkle, which is a sort of a holy grail bottle of bourbon that,
sure it is.
That if you've ever come across one, buy it if it's reasonable. But they're hard to find and they're very famous. And then oddly enough, I think after Weller died, Pappy bought Weller's distillery, and then eventually they got swallowed up by bigger. They're part of Buffalo Trace now?
They are Buffalo Trace now. They are. What happened with the Weller family is that Prohibition rolled along. Weller had a bunch of whiskey in rickhouses aging, and then Prohibition hits, and they needed to figure out what to do with this whiskey. Well, what a lot of people don't know is when Prohibition hit, they made whiskey available to people through prescription, and it became medicinal. And so W.L. Weller needed to do something with his whiskey, so he partnered with Seitzel, and Pappy was part of the Seitzel group, and Weller became Seitzel Weller. And so Seitzel had the medicinal license, and so they could bring all their bourbon over or in their rickhouse, and they could sell their bourbon medicinally, and they were able to get money for the product that they made. But not every distillery had medicinal license. So a lot of these distilleries became conglomerate so that they could get rid of their whiskey.
Share the license.
Yeah,
It is
absolutely.
wild. History is just repeating itself with
Medical
a new drug. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
It is
but,
insane.
we toured the Seitzel Weller distillery, and it was one of the more beautiful places I've ever been. A lot of different whiskeys come out of the distilleries that we're talking about. The Weller distillery is now part of Buffalo Trace. Out of Buffalo Trace, you get Blanton's, you get E.H. Taylor, you get Elmer T. Lee, you get obviously Weller, Eagle Rare is all part of this. And what's funny is the mash bill is what makes up the flavor of the whiskey. And these are, you're spot on, one of the first wheaters that came out. Wheated whiskey is a little more sweet. And that's why
This hits you for about 10 seconds after
So
you drink it.
the 107 is the proof, so it's a very high proof
Very high proof.
drink, but it's one of their OG recipes. So enjoy.
Yeah, I just took a sip and it lingered for a long time. Hey, I like how you research all that stuff about bourbon before the podcast, right? That's the only reason you know all that, because you're researching it before the podcast.
Mark's been there. I had to Google it.
You didn't already just know that.
yeah, I knew it all.
Oh man.
Yeah, Brandon.
He's deep down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we right after our when we started recording our last podcast, I had just come back from the Bourbon Trail, and they call it the Bourbon Trail up there. And we shacked up in Louisville in an Airbnb, and we got up one morning. We went to Angel's Envy, and we went to Seitzel Weller, and then we went to a great little distillery in downtown Louisville called Peerless. I hope to at some point have a double oaked version of their bourbon in here with us. If you ever find it, we need to grab it. The second day we went to Buffalo Trace, Woodford Reserve, and then we ended up at Old Forester. All great bourbons, all great historic pieces of the country. Bourbon has a huge role in the development and the growth of the United States. It was part of the healthcare world for a long time. Prohibition was a long time. I think that Prohibition was like 20-something years. I can't remember.
That long?
It was a real long time.
Wow.
And they had to figure out how. They still made it, and they still stored it, but they had to figure out how to go ahead and sell it. And the government stopped them from selling it. And
What a wild.
it's pretty crazy. Huh?
They used to prescribe bourbon.
Well, I was gonna say, other than like a hot toddy, I wonder what they prescribed it.
Are we going to be saying the same thing in 100 years?
It's possible. It's possible.
Potentially. Well, we got a vote coming up here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we sure do.
To
Absolutely.
legalize marijuana.
Yep. Recreational mother herb.
Be interesting.
Yep. Well, guys, I've had a great time today. It was fun breaking down how brokers get paid. I think we can dive into some other topics as we get together next. Any parting thoughts, Brandon?
Man, what a great episode. I appreciate it. No, I've got nothing.
Alex, how about you?
Again, just love the new setup. Appreciate all you guys.
Guys,
Been
thank
fun.
you. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us on Healthcare Uncut Unfiltered. Another quick toast to the
Cheers.
new adventure, the new journey coming down the road. Look forward to sharing with you some of the adventures on that kind of thing too. But again, that's us. We're out. Healthcare Uncut Unfiltered.
Bye, everybody.